The Brain of Confusion and Wormscarf are generally seen as roughly equal in terms of defensive power. One reduces damage by 17%, and the other ignores a sixth of all hits, or 16.7%. A few prominent takes on the Brain of Confusion versus Wormscarf debate both place the Brain of Confusion as the superior option, as while you do lose a theoretical 0.3% damage reduction, the Cerebral Mind Trick debuff applied by the Brain after a dodge gives you plus 10% crit chance and plus 10% summon damage. This offensive boost tips the balance in favor of the Brain for many people. However, it isn't that simple because of how damage reduction works. It's never as simple as 17% and 16.6% are basically the same. Both of these affect damage very differently. Basically, Wormscarf's DR adds the additive damage reduction stat called Endurance in the decompiled code, while Brain simply ignores a sixth of hits. This slight discrepancy in math affects both items greatly. Terraria damage calculation is done in 6 steps. 1. Check for banners, and if there is one, have damage and round down. 2. Check for Warmth Potion. If it applies and you're buffed, decrease damage by 30% and round down. 3. Apply defense and round down. 4. Apply damage reduction additively. That is, add up all your DR percent bonuses and apply them together and round down. 5. Apply Solar Flare Armor's buff, which if present is 20% and round down. 6. Apply Beetle Endurance's buff, which if present is 15, 30, or 45% and round down. 7. And lastly, apply Paladin's shield buff if present and round down. Basically, being applied additively here helps the Wormscarf since you're trying to make a number decrease. Basic logic dictates that 40 times 1 minus 0.1 plus 0.7 is going to be a smaller number than 40 times 1 minus 0.1 times 1 minus 0.17, since the second operation isn't diluted by the first in this case. So, unlike the Wormscarf's additiveness, like this, the Brain of Confusion applies multiplicatively, practically at least. It essentially acts as a 5/6 multiplication operand at the end of all calculations, since it throws away a sixth of all completed hits. By being both multiplicative and at the end of calculations, its power is relatively diluted by the calculations that come before it. If you don't believe my math, here's also a basic Java program that simulates Terraria's damage hits. We are simulating a setup that is identical aside from whether the Wormscarf or Brain is equipped. We simulate 100 million hits, with the caveat that on the Brain setup, we have a 1/6 chance to skip hits in lieu of the 17% DR boost of the Eater setup. So, with only the Wormscarf and Brain equipped on each simulated setup, the results are quite obvious. The Wormscarf is slightly better, since 17% is greater than 16.6%, but the results soon change. When we add an Endurance Potion, the additive DR difference kicks in, and soon enough the Wormscarf is 3% ahead of the Brain instead of just 0.6%. Let's also add another DR boost of 15% from the Turtle Armor. Now we're 7.5% ahead. And if we add something like the Frozen Turtle Shell, which is 25%, then it isn't even close. Essentially, Wormscarf is mathematically better per hit, and is also the better option for tanking setups that have high amounts of DR. However, it is also better for face tanking too. The Brain should be better for face tanking given that a dodge grants double the immunity frames of a normal hit. This means that a dodge doesn't just skip 1 hit, but 2, if you're constantly taking damage. However, if you're astute, you may know that the Brain of Confusion can only dodge once every 4 seconds, since that buff that improves damage I mentioned before also prevents further dodges. This timer on dodges absolutely destroys it relative to the Wormscarf for face tanking, even with its improved iframes. So, which side am I on? Well, I'm not a tank player, so I typically go with the Brain. Even if the Wormscarf is a few percentage points better with Endurance on, I do enjoy the extra damage and scathe-free, knockback-free experience. It does, after all, take quite a lot of DR to make the Scarf significantly better than the Brain, so the Scarf would be better for anyone playing tank. Period. Though, I must say, much like my pillar comparison videos, this conversation is largely moot. After all, if you're a tank, why use one when you have access to both?